Former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani. Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening, Greta. Nice to talk to you.
Mayor, this past week has been just awful in Orlando, but it's certainly no surprise. In 2014, in January, President Obama said that ISIS was JV. 2.5 years later, it is now metastasized all over the globe. Tell me, going into November, this election, tell me how a President Trump would differ in terms of handling this ISIS than what you predict a President Hillary Clinton would.
Well, I mean, you couldn't have done worse than Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. I mean, if I were Donald, I'd use that as my campaign slogan. I can't do worse than what they did. I mean, the reality is 4 or 5 years ago, there was an ISIS, but it wasn't the organization it is today. When he said it was the JV, he was really talking about the ISIS of 2 or 3 years ago and the ISIS that he kind of inherited. He's the one that made it into a varsity Islamic terrorist organization by a number of things. Not intervening in Syria when he should have 5 years ago. John McCain and Lindsey Graham are absolutely right. He, by doing that, made it possible for ISIS to metastasize. I mean, they were a cancer already, but they metastasized under a failed Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama policy. Then his 12 threats to Assad and his failure to take action after those 12 threats lost all credibility for the United States. And I know Islamic terrorism since 1973, Greta, so I know what I'm talking about. And I've read most of their major works. And the only thing you can do to stop Islamic extremist terrorism is you have to be on offense. If you are on defense, as we have been in the last 3 or 4 years, or as we were before September 11th, when we took the hit at the coal and didn't strike back, and we were hit in East Africa and struck back, but very meekly. When you do that, you invite the kind of attacks we're getting now. And I don't know if you realize it, but they really are beginning to expand exponentially. We've had 4 massive attacks in less than a year, right? Santa Barbara, Brussels, Paris, and now this tragedy in horrible attack.
But it's even more than that. In the Philippines this week, an ISIS affiliate beheaded a Canadian. Boko Haram in Africa, they're an ISIS affiliate.
And in France, the police officer and his wife who were knifed, and people are talking about gun control. I mean, so if they don't have a gun, they use a knife. If they don't have a knife, they use a bomb. If they don't have a bomb, they use anthrax. If they don't use anthrax, they're going to use dirty bombs when Iran starts to make nuclear material available to them, if Iran isn't already making nuclear material available to them. So, I mean, the reality is that weakness in the face of this kind of insane religious ideology only breeds more attack. And all Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton have been, from the day they started, is weak. Taking all of our troops out of Iraq, taking all of our troops out of Afghanistan, leaving nothing behind. Of course you weren't going to find out about the development of ISIS. There was nobody there to tell you about it. I mean, you have to be dumb not to figure out why this was a terrible mistake. So now what would President Trump do? Here's what I would advise him to do. Number one, he's absolutely right. You've got to face your enemy and call them what they are. It's Islamic extremist terrorism. That is the philosophy behind the attack that went on in Orlando. And in this particular case, it was focused against a group of people that are considered enemies of fundamentalist, extremist Muslims, gay and lesbian people. I mean, we've seen them throw homosexual men off buildings. They've sent us pictures of it just to show us how much they hate people that are gay and lesbian. So that adds an extra dimension to it. But this is very similar to when they take a group of Christians and chop their heads off. If you're a Christian, you're an infidel. If you're a gay and a lesbian, you're an infidel. If you're a Jew, you're an infidel. If you're not their kind of fundamentalist Muslim and a Muslim, you're an infidel, and they'll chop your head off. And then he's got to put boots on the ground. I don't want to hear ever again, no boots on the ground. I don't want to hear that.
Well, he talks about two things that I hear. Number one, he talks about a ban on Muslims, which, look, you know, there are Muslims serving in our military who are very fine men and women and loyal Americans. Then he talks about a wall, but look at the vicious killer in Orlando.
Right.
He got his inspiration over the internet. The internet isn't blocked by a wall.
The ban should be a ban on Muslims coming from countries in which there are serious threats to the United States, and those people should only be allowed in, if at all, if there's a vetting process that the director of the FBI is comfortable with, and James Comey says he's not comfortable with the vetting process for people coming in from particularly Syria in this particular case. But mainly, you're asking me about ISIS. The approach to ISIS has to be recognize who they are, what they are. And we have to commit not just bombings, but we have to commit troops to wiping them out. We should have done it 5 years ago. We need to create a no-fly zone in Syria. We've got to push Assad back, and we have to take those refugees and put them in Syria with a no-fly zone protected by the American Air Force, the American military, and everybody else who wants to join us. Look, the president of France was willing to do this 2 or 3 years ago. I was so embarrassed when the president of France wanted to take a more aggressive position with regard to Islamic extremist terrorism than the president. The president of France uses the words Islamic extremist terrorism. In fact, when the foreign minister of France used those words, the White House took it out of the tape. So we have something absurd going on here. You couldn't do worse than the policies of Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. And what we need is a president who is going to commit himself to wiping out ISIS. No timetable, like the stupidity of the timetable we had in Iraq and Afghanistan. What war was ever fought on a timetable? Here's the timetable when they stop threatening us.
Yeah, I never